It's an incredible honor to invite Rabbi Michelle Greenfield to offer words of Torah this evening.
Lishana Tova. It is amazing to see how even in this year, we are able to come together, hundreds of us, to mark the beginning of another year, the completion of another cycle. We now rank Rosh Hashanah among the holiest of holidays, a moment when the gates are open for personal change, but the Torah actually says very little about this day. This isn't even the first month of the year on the Torah's calendar. The beginning of this 7th month, though, is described in the Torah as a holiday time, a time to refrain from work, and in Numbers, a Yom Tru'ah, a day of Tru'ah. What is this Tru'ah? So kids and their grown-ups who have sung the shofar blast song with me so many times over the past years know very well that Tru'ah is the shofar call that has 9 parts. Tikiyah is the full long call. Shavarim, which means broken, is that Tikiyah broken into 3 parts. And Tru'ah is further divided into 9 parts. But that still doesn't explain really anything. What does it mean that Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tru'ah? This biblical root of Resh Vav Ayin evokes a raising a shout of many kinds. Raising a shout in war, calling out in triumph, raising our voices in music and worship, or crying out in distress or tears. This Yom Tru'ah, I think we can do all of those. Maybe not the war part, but calling out in triumph, raising our voices in music and worship, and crying out in distress or tears seem all pretty realistic to me. We're collectively pretty good at the Tru'ah of music and worship. Even over Zoom, we've already seen and heard tonight at Slichot last weekend and on so many Shabbatot that we have that covered. We know that Rabbi Mo, Koach, and Ali will guide us through this day as a Yom Tru'ah, in which we can raise our voices musically. Even though we can't necessarily hear all of each other's voices, we can call out from our own homes, and we can ask that our voices be heard, whether our voices be lifted literally or internally as we lift them. We can still join our voices, our truot, out loud over the Zoom chat and in our hearts. Whether your worshipful truah is a loud, joyous cry or a silent inner prayer, you are part of this larger truah of music and worship. Yom Tru'ah is also a day of triumph. After all, you are here. You made it to another year, which is never a given and is always worth celebrating. Take that triumphant breath, call out in gratitude for the loving relationships you have, rejoice in whatever goodness you can see. We can all celebrate the fact that our community is strong. We can share the gratitude for the many volunteers who made all of the different offerings of this season possible, the creativity and work that bring us together over Zoom and in person. The fact that in the midst of a global pandemic, political upheaval, and the stunning effects of climate change, hundreds of us are gathered here together on Zoom to make community is a huge reason to cry out in triumph. And this year especially, I'm hoping that we also leave room for Yom Tru'ah as a day of crying out in tears and distress. In this year that is so unlike other years, in this moment that was so beyond most of our imaginations 1 year ago, we need to make space to acknowledge the brokenness and let it be a part of how we come together. This moment is hard. So much of this is hard. And you don't need to pretend, even for Rosh Hashanah, that it's all great or even that it's all okay. Our community is holy because we can share our joy, we can share our celebrations, our wisdom, our Torah learning, our art installations, but our community is also holy because we can bring all of ourselves, and that includes bringing our grief and our tears. So I want to share 3 biblical moments of crying and calling out that are connected to these days, to invite in the tears, the truot of those who came before us, and also to help us bring in our own truot. In the Talmud, in the middle of a technical discussion about lengths and numbers of the blasts of the shofar for Rosh Hashanah, a connection is made between the Tru'ah, those 9-part shofar calls of this Rosh Hashanah day, and the wailing of Siseras Mother. Sisera, a commander in the Canaanite army, has been killed pretty violently by Yael, and in a poetic retelling in the book of Judges, his mother is waiting for him to come home. Her son is delayed, and she knows that this cannot be a good sign. The Bible says, "Through the window peered Sisera's mother. Behind the lattice she moaned. Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why so late the clatter of his wheels?" Sisera's mother cries, a cry that the rabbis heard echo in the shofar calls, tears of mourning and loss. She cries tears of grief for her son. These tears are familiar to those who are personally mourning and crying for the loss of people we love, but there's also a communal truah of this holiday. In a moment where over 200,000 people in our country alone have died in this current pandemic. We can also share communal cries of distress for the lives that have been lost to racism and police brutality. If the truah that you are bringing to this Rosh Hashanah is that of Sisera's mother, that of grief for lost lives, know that there is space for it here as we come together. There's also a midrash that connects Sarah's tears to the sounds of the shofar. In the Torah reading from Genesis for the second day of Rosh Hashanah, which there is a recording of on the High Holiday portal, we read about Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac. Isaac's father had taken him away and nearly sacrificed him on God's command, stopped only by the last-minute intervention of an angel. Later generations of commentators are left to wonder what his mother Sarah's response is to this moment. One midrash imagines the combination between Sarah and Isaac when he returns home. Sarah says, "Where were you, my son?" Isaac answers with the whole story. "Well, my father took me and brought me over the mountains and down the hills." He tells her the whole thing. Sarah cries out, "Oh no, my son! If it wasn't for the angel, you would have already been killed?" Isaac simply says, "Yes." At that moment in the midrash, Sarah screams and cries out 6 times, corresponding, according to the rabbis, of the 6 times of tekiah, that long note is sounded on the shofar. Sarah didn't stop crying, they say, until she died. Sarah's tears are also familiar, maybe tears that some of us will cry over this holiday. Sarah's truah is a cry of wondering how to keep going. She is wondering how to protect the people she loves, just as we wonder how we can protect our beloveds, how we can give our kids what we know they need. Sarah is mourning something intangible. Her son is still alive, but her sense of safety, her connection to the world around her is changed. In this moment, so many of us are struggling with the realities of this world we live in, crying for losses of everyday moments and special occasions, and even grieving the ways we wish we could be together on this holiday. If you are holding Sarah's cry, I invite you to find space for it in these days and to know that we will hold it with you. The next calling out is connected to the day more than it's midrashically connected to the shofar. Tomorrow morning, Naomi Siegel will read the Haftarah with the story of Hannah. And it's really good to know that even when it seems like everything is changing, there are some things, like Naomi reading Haftarah, that are constants. Hannah is distraught because she has no children. She's miserable because God has closed her womb. Her husband's other wife taunts her for this, making her even more upset. Hannah goes to the temple and prays, weeping as she speaks to God, makes deals with God, and praises God. When Eli the priest accuses her of being drunk, she answers him, "Oh no, my Lord, I am a very unhappy woman. I have drunk no wine or other strong drink, but I have been pouring out my heart to God. I have only been speaking all this time out of my great anguish and distress." Hannah's truah is one of deep personal pain. Her crying is one that might be so familiar, the pain of infertility, a crying for a family that doesn't look like what she wants or is not the family she dreamed of. And Hannah's truah is also the pain of deep loneliness, felt by so many in this time who are isolated or unable to safely spend time with family and friends. These truot live in many of us as well. If Hannah's cry is also your cry right now, remember that there's also room for that here. That we can hold your disappointment and your loneliness even as we gather and celebrate in holy community. So as we begin this Yom Teruah, this Rosh Hashanah, and this whole year together, please bring all of your truot. I hope that in some way today is a day of triumph for you. And I know that if you spend enough time with us, it will be a day of musical calling out. We will sing with joy, talk about the new year, and look triumphantly to the future together with you. And please bring your own teruah of tears, of crying out. This is a space where tears are welcome, whether they're the tears of Siseras Mother, or the tears of our mother Sarah, or the tears of Hannah. This is a space, granted it's a virtual space, with room for you to grieve, to mourn for the losses of this year and the holiday that could have been. I know that we will continue to find ways to be in sacred community together, whether that's over Zoom, safely distanced and masked in a park, or eventually returning to services together. And I hope that we can continue to hold on to and share all of the truot together on this Rosh Hashanah, in this year to come, and in future years. Shana Tova.